Welcome to Tea with Bibi, where empowered women empower others through their narratives. And today I have another Zimbabwean powerhouse while we are in the garden following the COVID-19 rules and our new normal of broadcasting from outside. And today I have the lioness in me. Her name is Chiyedza. It's a pleasure having you here, Chiyedza. It's good to have a cup of tea with you. And do you mind introducing yourself?
Thank you, Bibi, for having me on the show. It's an honor and it's a great pleasure to be here on a very good day following COVID-19 rules.
It's helping us to think outside the box. Now we have to sit outside and enjoy the garden. It's my favorite tree, by the way.
Thank you very much. It looks good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, Chiyedza, tell us who Chiyedza is. Who's Chichi?
Chiyedza Chiwonzoro is a young woman born almost half a century ago.
You don't look
Almost.
You do not look half a century, sorry.
She was born and bred in Zimbabwe, and while she was in Zimbabwe, she became a little mischievous, if I can put it that way. She became pregnant at the age of 14. She became a mom at the age of 14. That's who Chiyedza is. She's a mom. She is a professional nurse. She is an author. She is a grandma.
You don't look like grandma, but I need to take you back. Let's move back. Chiyedza had a child at 14. That's a teenager.
That's right.
What did your mom and dad say?
Yeah, it was a very difficult time for my parents, and it was heartbreaking, I think, for my father, because my father was a man of principles, if I can say. So to find your own daughter as a teacher as well at the same school in grade 7, fallen pregnant, it did break him. I believe it made him very angry. He was very upset because he's even the one who found out that I was pregnant. I didn't know that I was pregnant.
How did you find out?
I had fallen out of certain foods and I was craving for foods that I wouldn't eat normally. For instance, I never wanted to eat meat anymore. And you would know that when there's meat in the house, which is fatty, that was my favorite. But I would feel sick and I didn't know why I was feeling sick. And I would say, oh, I would like some vegetables. So from my aunt who lived down the road, they used to cook pumpkin leaves in peanut butter, which I never loved. But all of a sudden there was a switch. And my father noticed that I was frequenting to auntie and I was having this. And everyone even in that household, they were surprised that they never said anything. So in the end, my father spoke to my aunt to find out what was going on because he felt I was pregnant. He said, "Mwana ashata." So from there, investigations were made where I was interrogated by my aunt and I was not able to say yes because I didn't think I was pregnant. I didn't know I was pregnant and I just wondered what she was talking about. So she had to squeeze me because she actually said, wait until your father touches you. Mm-hmm. Then,
Like that one.
No. It was, I had to tell. So aunt asked me, do you have a boyfriend? I said, no, I don't have a boyfriend. And she kept on until that time it had to be said. And she did ask me if I had slept with this boy. So I said yes. So from there, it was obvious that my father had sussed out something and he had really noticed that there was something wrong with me.
You had cravings and going to your auntie's house.
It was a difficult time to having to go to live in that home. I was not used, and mind you, my mind was not of a woman but of a child. I longed to go back home regardless of the situation. And of course it's taboo. You need to do the culture thing whereby kunosungirwa, which is a little bit of input from the in-laws, so that they are accepting and they know they've got somebody's child because their boy has given pregnancy to this girl. So it was a bit back and forth, but I thank God again for my paternal grandparents. They were both alive, and I think they did quiz my father a lot in terms why I was staying there, because I remember at some point I had to speak to my grandmother with regards to this, and I was crying. I didn't want to stay there. And I grew up in a home where there was plenty of food. My father had a grocery shop, so everything was there. I used to eat meat every day. There was proper upbringing and there was no lack.
Mm-hmm.
Then
you didn't like that one.
No.
You had to tell the truth. So your father is actually a very observant parent. So which means parents need to observe the changes in our children. Some reactions need to sell out something is not right.
Definitely.
And we thank God he is observant. And your mom, what was your mother's reaction?
Looking back, actually, I feel sorry for my mom because I think to an extent she had to take the blame for what I had done, which is more of a culture thing that moms know whatever is happening with the children.
Every bad thing, when it comes out, it's like you're the mother who taught them.
Yes.
And do mothers teach people bad things?
No, they don't. And poor mom, she had to put up with it. And she had to put up with beating me up so hard. Looking back, I could have lost the baby because of the beating. But she didn't do it because she wanted to do it, but she had an obligation to an extent to feel, but was it really meant to be that way?
Or maybe they don't know how. It's the way they were socialized as well. When a child does wrong, maybe the stick used to help them to do it.
That's right.
But it's about knowing how to react to a situation, and we are all learning, because probably it was her reaction.
And sometimes a reaction, you can't really plan a reaction. When things happen, the first instinct that kicks in is what you tend to do. So yeah, mom was heartbroken. She was quite disturbed by the whole thing because she had to carry a lot of the burden.
With society as well talking, but then what became the next step? What did your father do? There you are expecting, and probably you are due in a short space of time?
Fortunately, my father did notice the pregnancy when it was still very early. So I was in grade 7. I was meant to be writing my grade 7 exams at the end of the year. So there was a back and forth of conversation between parents, the boy's parents. The boy's parent was a teacher as well at the same school with my father. And the boy was 2 years older than me, was 16. So we were both children, young children. So what was decided then, I had to elope. I was sent to go and stay in the schoolyard because that's where the parents of this boy lived. So I went to live with in-laws per se. At 14 in the schoolyard.
At 14?
In the schoolyard.
I can imagine teenagers. I mean, having my own teenagers at 14 is a bit of work. So how about somebody else, teenager, an expecting one?
It was a difficult time to having to go to live in that home. I was not used. And mind you, my mind was not of a woman, but of a child. I longed to go back home, regardless of the situation. And of course, it's taboo. You need to do the culture thing whereby kunosungirwa, which is a little bit of input from the in-laws, so that they are accepting and they know they've got somebody's child because their boy has given pregnancy to this girl. So it was a bit back and forth, but I thank God again for my paternal grandparents. They were both alive, and I think they did quiz my father a lot in terms why I was staying there, because I remember at some point I had to speak to my grandmother with regards to this, and I was crying. I didn't want to stay there. So there's a lot of innocence in young girls when they fall pregnant, but it's how the culture carries it and deals with it from your parents' point of view, from the in-laws' point of view.
And society was talking.
Society plays a major role in breaking or building society, in a nutshell, because children are the future society. I was the future society, but obviously I had done something that was deemed wrong, or that was wrong in all areas of life. It was wrong, but there was a lot of laugh. There was a lot of name calling. I was called a prostitute, but I didn't, what is a prostitute? It didn't make sense to me, but at the same time, it's a heavy word to be used.
Now, as parents or as a society, should we be using bad words to children because they've done something not acceptable?
We need to step back and learn again. If we haven't learned by now, let's start now, because these words spoken, they build or they break you. But then it also depends with the inbuilt of the person, the character of the person. How long will it break you? Will it break you for good and that's you done? Or it will break you for a little while, but then you rise again? How many of these teen girls will rise again after having gone through such a traumatic time and situations that are so unfavorable? How many?
Then we take you back. You go back to your parents after deliberations, and you feeling hungry, thinking you still have all the rights which were withdrawn. Yeah. What next?
So the deliberations were done. I went back home, and after a few days I felt ill. I went to hospital. I had my baby at St. Michael's Hospital in Mondoro, Zimbabwe, and that was in 1985, December. So when I gave birth, unfortunately my son developed jaundice within a week or so. I had to be transferred to Harare Hospital, where I was there for almost 2 weeks.
Yeah, I remember, what they do is they put them under lights, some kind of light back then in the 80s, and some kind of lights until they start turning the color or something like that.
So that was the process that was done. My son had the treatment. I stayed at Harare Hospital for almost a fortnight. You go and feed them, then in the night you go and sleep somewhere in the hostels where we used to go. And I was this little girl with all these big mothers in the nurseries, and it was such an experience that when I look back and I look at the 14-year-olds today, it breaks my heart.
Yes, it's a very difficult time. I also had a preterm child, and that time, and also I was a bit broken down. I remember every 2 hours, and the nurses were very unkind. Every 2 hours, I had to go across the hospital to go and feed this baby, and the milk goes into a tube, and the tube then gets into the baby, and you're up and down throughout. And the nurses are not as kind as the British nurses, and it's draining as well for a young person. I can imagine.
So while I was there, there was now the plan that I was going back to school. Imagine I've written my grade 7 while I was heavily pregnant. Thank God I did pass and I had a place secured for me to go back into school. But I had my own fears regardless of being this child again. The child in me was just being a child. But having to go to school with breast full of milk, how was I going to cope? What if somebody just knocked me by mistake? What was I going to do? And what would they think? So I had these questions which I didn't utter, but I was thinking about them. What if they know? Then what is going to happen? So I thank God in a way that all this happened, but it led to my going back to school. And I give credit to my parents and I give credit to God because He gave them that wisdom to say, okay, this child is messed up, but hey, we need to send her back to school. She needs to be somebody. Because my father used to say, I don't want you to teach gunduru gunduru. Nobody. I don't want you to be nobody. You need to go back to school.
We are going to take a break and we'll be back shortly as we continue speaking to Chiyedza Chiwonzoro.